Raleigh Monroe Counseling Agency is celebrating survivors of domestic violence. Good evening to you. I'm Jennifer Andrews. Kenya Ross tells us how it is making a difference in their lives. Kenya?
Jennifer, the Family Justice Center that's under the Wellspring hosted their annual Domestic Violence Awareness Month ceremony today in West Monroe. The Family Justice Center and the Ouachita Parish Safe Task Force hosted its annual Domestic Violence Awareness Month commemorative ceremony Thursday morning on Cotton Street in West Monroe. The Wellspring serves as the lead agency to the Justice Center. That's according to the counseling agency. They called this year's ceremony Hope in the Light of Day.
So we are out in the community educating about domestic violence a little bit more. It just sheds a little bit more light on domestic violence. The event that we hosted today, Hope in the Light of Day, was to educate and share information about survivors of domestic violence.
The staff of the Wellspring received an award from the Louisiana Coalition Against Domestic Violence at the ceremony, recognizing the services the agency provides to the victims of domestic violence. The director of program development with the coalition says they're traveling across the state to honor the strength of domestic violence survivors.
Whenever we travel around the state, we really are looking at what are the unmet needs of survivors, what are we seeing across our state with domestic violence, what services are available to survivors, and what services we can strengthen.
And victims can call the 24/7 National Domestic Violence Hotline for support. We'll have that information on KNOE.com. Jennifer?